Almost everything that's going on in the world today that we don't like especially is by design. Absolutely true. That was one of the hardest things for me to get used to because I thought that was not logical. I remember when I was first starting to read about these things and I was aware that our civilization, our culture was, I'm going to say attack, but that's not what I thought of it at the time. It was under degradation. It was this natural process of decay. And it wasn't until, maybe 3 or 4 years after that I began to realize that, wait a minute, in addition to that historic motion of decay of societies and cultures, there were people out there that were making it happen. And they wanted to hurry it up and steer it and put it on their time schedule so they could take advantage of it because they wanted the destruction of our system so they could build their system. First, you got to destroy what's out there. Well, the word we don't like to use, but it's the only word left. It's a conspiracy. Yeah, it was planned. It's still planned. Almost everything of magnitude that I now believe. I mean, the important things about my life and society, culture, issues of ethics, and the important things. Almost every one of them are different now than they were when I was young. Well, I was born into the system. I realize now that the issues that we're talking about is corruption in politics and every place. Anytime there's a concentration of money and power, like governments, large corporations, even church organizations, when you've got this concentration of power and money, it's a magnet to the predator class. Crooks, scoundrels, thieves, killers, rapists, murderers, they are all drawn to those institutions like moths are drawn to light bulbs. We have to assume that they're there. They're in these institutions because that's what they do.
Throughout history, in every generation, there's a group of men, women, and children who are able to see the world in a way that others do not. They see answers when others see problems. They see hope when others see despair. They stand up to tyrants when others cower in fear. We are in search of this generation's Copernicus, Galileo, Harriet Tubman, Joan of Arc. Those who take a stand for justice, walk boldly in faith, and find solutions that are outside of the box. Those who are willing to lay their lives on the line for truth, will never compromise, back down, or give in. Men and women of character and grit, living fearlessly in the face of tyranny.
And don't let anybody ever tell you that it's white or black. Christ belongs to all people. He belongs to the whole world.
Join us for deep discussions and hard-hitting conversations with the who's who, the best and the brightest minds on the front line. Welcome to the Outliers, today's world changers.
Hey guys, welcome back to Resistance Chicks. We're your hosts, Leah and Michelle. You can probably tell by the smile on my face that I'm super excited about our guest today. We have with us the one and the only and the amazing American legend, G. Edward Griffin, in the house. You guys know him. He's no stranger to our show, and he's certainly no stranger to the gold and silver movement. G. Edward Griffin, I'm so excited to have you back on. Welcome to the program.
Well, thank you for having me back. Actually, I always get a charge of my battery when I'm on your show because you gals are not only enthusiastic, but you're making things happen. So
well,
I just wish we had more like you.
Well, that's high praise. I do have to remind our viewers, and also you, I don't know if you remember this or not, the first time that we had you on our show, because we do so many interviews and we talk to people all the time, was the first time that I was ever nervous interviewing anybody. I am happy to say that now, and I even got nervous the second time we interviewed you. I'm happy to say that the third time, all the butterflies are gone. But it is a big deal. It's a big deal to have somebody like yourself on our program. And my mom was down here just talking to Mr. Griffin a minute ago. He's the original gangster, the OG. Like he's the first that started fighting this war, which we have been in, not just an information war, but the monetary war, the war for truth for so long. I remember watching your videos on YouTube so many years ago, reading The Creature from Jekyll Island. There's even been a rap song that was written with you in it, which I usually feature, so I'll probably play that at the end of this show. But Mr. Griffin, I mean, you have been on the forefront from day one. Can you just kind of quickly remind our viewers why you even started doing this?
Wow. Why did I do it? It's impossible to answer that question because I don't know. I mean, all I can tell you is that I have to. And I think everybody has something deep inside them when they have something very important in their lives that they have to take care of.
Yeah.
They may not understand why they're driven to sacrifice other portions of their life to make this one thing happen, but I think most people have this affinity to something, usually beyond themselves, outside of their skin, I didn't know when I was a young man and became first aware of what was going on in the world. I was very materialistic and very much about into me and my family. How am I looking? You know, am I making a lot of money? And I got a new car, all that stuff, you know. And then I started having an awareness of what's going on in the world, and I discovered to my shock, I had a crusader gene started to rattle.
Crusader gene, I like that.
And I found myself thinking outside of my skin for the first time. My obligation, as it were, to humanity, or to my, not just my family, but to my community, to my country,
That's good.
to everybody in the world. I didn't know I had those kinds of thoughts.
Wow.
I thought that was just for old people, you know. And but I found I had it. So I cannot answer your question, except that somehow I think when I was put together by the Creator, it was programmed into me, and that was about it. That's, what can I say?
I like that crusader gene. I'm not sure I've ever heard that before, but you certainly have it. When you see an injustice and then you feel like you have to do at least what little you can in this world to try to change it, which you've been doing and you've never stopped.
Yeah.
No.
So,
I considered it. I was very close to giving up a couple of times,
really?
especially when I was working on The Creature from Jekyll Island,
Oh.
that book. It was so huge. The topic was so beyond my background and my knowledge base. I thought, what on earth am I trying to do? Taking on the banking fraternity, who am I, a little guy? I knew nothing about banking or money, so I had to learn everything from ground up. And the more I learned, the more I realized how much I needed to learn yet. The topic got bigger and bigger as I, waddled into it. And I came to the dark night, as they say. I thought, I'm not going to finish this thing. This is beyond me. And I actually quit twice in that project. I thought, I've got to put, groceries on the table for my family. I can't do this forever, learning and reading and indexing and all that stuff. But that crusader gene wouldn't stop rattling. Back I went. So I don't know. I think most people have that element in them if they'll just listen for it and look for it.
No, that's really good.
Yeah.
That's kind of encouraging for a lot of people because if you said, I can't really even answer this question, how I got started in all of this, so many other people I think are sitting there going, well, I don't even know what I could do. I would say just wait and it will come to you when it's time, and you're made for just such a time as this. And we're living in such precarious times that I think everybody has some sort of calling for that crusader gene to start to manifest.
So it's interesting that we have you on today as Trump is, I guess, set to abolish the Department of Education. And this is a kind of a something that is near and dear to your heart. We have taken your Norman Dodd interview about the Carnegie and Rockefeller Foundations and their hand in the American education system to switch it from I guess, how would you say it, a humanities, God-based worldview to an economic worldview. In light of kind of the new Trumpian take on maybe taking on the education system, do you want to remind our viewers that the slow movement of the ship basically turning would eventually lead to the trans ideology that we see today?
No, I was not able to predict that or see it, even
How
imagine.
could you? It's just
How
so
could anybody?
foreign.
Yeah, it seems so contrary to instinct. That surely the whole human race would be against it. Even the ones you don't like, the people you don't like, would be against that, wouldn't they?
Yeah.
No, they wouldn't. But we have to learn these things. I'm still learning things that I previously had rejected, which is, I think it's important to be very cautious about coming to quick judgment over new ideas.
It's good.
Because almost everything of magnitude that I now believe, I mean, the important things about my life and society and culture and issues of ethics and so forth, the important things, almost every one of them are different now than they were when I was young.
Oh, wow.
I mean, I was born into the system. I realize now that the issues that we're talking about, this corruption in politics and every place, anytime there's a concentration of money and power, like governments, large corporations, even church organizations, when you've got a concentration of power and money, it's a magnet
Sure.
to the predator class. Crooks, scoundrels, thieves, killers, rapists, murderers, they are all drawn to those institutions like moths are drawn to light bulbs.
Wow.
And we have to assume that they're there. They're in these institutions because
Right.
that's what they do. I remember, there's something that tags on to that idea. I remember reading for the first time a letter that had been written. This was during the Revolution, or shortly after the Revolution, when the Constitution was finally drafted, and it was signed by all the 13 states. And Thomas Jefferson received a letter from a friend of his. It was a doctor. We know about this letter because it's in the Jefferson Museum, or the library. And the doctor said to Jefferson, well, Mr. Jefferson, now that we have this republic, and I think he used the word republic correctly, so he said, how can we be sure that only good men are in office? Which is the kind of the thing, you know? That's what we're talking about. And Jefferson's response was magnificent. You could tell he was holding his temper a bit. He said, let us not speak of good men in office. Rather, let us bind men down with the chains of the Constitution.
That's amazing.
I thought, there it is. There's the whole thing we're talking about.
Right.
Now, in modern vernacular, what Jefferson was saying, good men in office, you got to be kidding.
That's so true.
That's what he was saying. We built this system, he was telling us even then. We built this system as best we could on the assumption that only scoundrels are in office.
Wow.
Oh, wow.
We're not building a system we can trust.
That's
Wow.
good.
We built a system we must mistrust. We must question, challenge, and be worried about what scoundrels and crooks are going to do to this jewel, he called it, that we have established here. Now, Americans have, and everybody has to learn that around the world. Stop trusting politicians because they aren't worthy of it.
That's good.
You can assume that. I mean, some are. We just don't know which ones are and which ones aren't. And we do know from historical reference here that most of them are not reliable. So let's face it. That's another one of those realities we have to quit being ashamed about understanding. We have to tell everybody why we feel that way, and I think most people would come around to agreeing with you. Yeah, you're right. They're scoundrels in political position. Why should we trust them? We should mistrust them.
That's good.
That's really good, and I think that there has been a lot of hero worship. I'm sure you've seen the memes out there of Captain America and Donald Trump. You have some, I would say, cautious warnings about this administration. Do you want to talk about any of that?
Well, sure. I'll talk about anything. I'm stupid enough to plunge into.
I feel like we need people who aren't just always the cheerleader. The rah-rah. I mean, I heard you did a really great interview with Daniela, and you weren't super pessimistic. I remember at the end she's like, are you even optimistic about the Doge cuts? And I don't want to pull any fake flowers out of you. You know what I mean? Like, if I'm going to see some flowers, let them be real flowers. I don't need your artificial flowers on my front doorstep. Okay. Right. It's not helpful for people, I think, to paint a rosy picture just so they can look at it while it's not rosy outside of the painted picture.
Well, I think that's a good analogy, and I feel exactly the same way, especially as I just explained with the Jefferson story, the letter. I'm very, very suspicious of powerful institutions, all of them. It's not just government. I mean, the big corporations are today, there's no difference really between the government and the corporations. They have been welded together in such a way. Just look at the people that go from the head of the FDA, and then when they get out of office, they go back to work as a vice president for one of the pharmaceutical companies.
Right, exactly.
And then the next administration, he's back in head of the FDA and so forth. Is that revolving door? There's the corporations and governments have sort of merged together. It's hard to tell one from the other because they are in essence they are the same. That's what I'm talking about. These institutions that are loaded with power and money. So naturally, I call it the predator class.
Yes.
That's where you find these guys. They're at the heads of these institutions. And just keep that in mind. You're stupid if you forget it or you refuse to acknowledge it. So it's not the Trump administration that I look at. I look at all administrations the same way. I have no preference. I don't think that political parties are a good idea. And our founding fathers didn't either. They warned against it. When they were drafting the Constitution and they were warning about the future of America, they actually were very outspoken about the dangers of political
concentrated power.
Power. And of course, everybody ignored it because that's human nature too. We have a herd instinct. We're a herd
to find a team
species, and we huddle together for protection and strength and so forth. So even though I don't like political parties because of what they are, I know that we're going to have them
right.
forevermore because that's human nature. So the question then becomes, well, how do you live with them and how do you keep from being dominated by them and destroyed by them? And we're back to Jefferson again. Let's bind them down with the chains of the Constitution and be very suspicious of everything they do.
That's good.
Be very skeptical and not so trusting. So now you ask me the question, what do I think about the Trump administration? I think the same thing about the Trump administration as I do about the Biden administration and even the Reagan administration, which I like, by the way. But I'm the kind of a guy that asks questions, and I just don't take things on the surface of slogans and things. And one of the things that bothers me about political parties is that they seldom talk about principles. It's always the good guys against the bad guys. It's always us against them. And so if you don't like the other side, you're given two sides, right? You got to be on the left or the right, or the Republicans versus the Democrats. What if there's not much difference between the two?
Exactly.
What do you do then? See, well, you're not allowed to ask that question. You're told to shut up and sit down and decide you're going to be Republican or Democrat. And I observed a long time ago that people in America and around the world don't vote for candidates. They vote against candidates.
Oh, wow.
It's not that they like somebody, it's that they hate the other guy so much that they put the devil in office if they could do so by keeping the other guy out, you know.
Yeah.
And so this is a very dangerous situation. It's one of the things I don't like about political parties and partisan work, is because you start talking about the good guys versus the bad guys. And all you have to, if you're a con artist and you want to rise to the top, all you have to do is just hire a team of researchers to find out what the public is wanting to hear. Okay, give me a talking point list of 7 points that I can tell the voters that I'm the guy for them, and they'll have it ready for you now in about, I think it takes about 3 months, but now that AI is here, I think it'll take about 3 minutes.
Right.
And so the candidates go out and they hold up the Constitution and they talk about how wonderful it is and how bad the other guys are that are in office, and we got to get rid of all this bloated bureaucracy and all this waste, all this evil and so forth. And they're true. I mean, everything is true that they say, but the idea is that, well, since we are talking that way, that we are not that way. Well, maybe that's true, and maybe it's not. We don't know. And the thing that concerns me most, and this has nothing to do with Trump, by the way, nothing to do with Trump, but I've seen it in every administration since Jefferson. I hate to say it, but it's true. Every administration, and there are a couple I don't know much about. I don't know about Taft and so forth, but I've seen it. If you go high enough in elevation and look down, you can see that it's a definite trend away from the constitutional republic we had when Jefferson walked out out of the hall with the Constitution in his hand. That was a republic, which meant that the democracy was not part of it.
Yeah.
People and their representatives were allowed to do only what the Constitution said they were allowed to do.
Right.
Nothing more. You know, if you win the election, everybody says, "Oh, we won. Now we can do anything we want to. We're the winners." You know, no, that's not a republic. That's a democracy, where the people get to do whatever they want to do to the minority.
Right.
It's a horrible, horrible system. But so anyway, ever since Jefferson, you can see the steady stream where that concept of a republic has been nibbled away until finally, the last. Well, it really hit me hard under the Bush administration when the second Bush said, "I am the decider." Remember, he used to say, "I am the decider." Well, that to me is a king speaking.
Okay.
That's the king speaking.
Sure.
We have deconstructed our constitutional republic over the years. Just could hardly wait till we get to a royalty where we can have a king, a man on the white horse that would do all the things against those bad people because we're good people and nobody's talking about principles anymore.
Wow.
So back to your question, I don't like it when I see any politician or political group talk about doing things against those bad people, even though we like to see it done. I want to know, how are you going to do it? Is it going to be done according to the constitutional limitation of power, or do we just give you an axe and say you could just swing the axe and cut off anybody's head you want to?
Yeah.
Is that it? Is that what we've come to?
Right.
And I'm afraid that is what we are coming to.
I think you mentioned something about executive orders, and I do believe that our team, you could say, was so demoralized over the past several years with Obama's pen in his phone and Trump sidelined during his 4 years and Biden with his 4 years of his, dictatorship, which he wasn't obviously running the government. So I think that, conservative minded people have felt like they've been walked all over by a king, and that they see that their only way that they can get vengeance or justice is with another king.
Yeah, I'm sure that's the mentality. It's let's get even. It's my turn now. And can you think of anything worse for the future of America?
Yeah.
That who's going to be king, and then you get even with the other side, back and forth. So what scares me is it seems to me that we're back to the word conspiracy again. Is this just accidental, or is this planned? Well, I think it's planned. In fact, I know it is because I've read some of the books and the private papers of the people who are doing this, and they make no bones about it in their private conclaves. And they talk about, well, let me give you an example. In my book, The Creature from Jekyll Island, I spoke about the Fabian socialists, if you remember. And in their home office, I guess it was a beautiful home in England, they had a stained glass window, and it was custom made, and it represented the principles of the Fabian Socialist Party. And now that still exists, by the way. Most people have never heard of it, but it's probably it is the most powerful political influence in England, and has been for decades, but people have never heard about it. About half of the members of Parliament and the prime ministers have all been members of that group, but people haven't heard about it. So I thought it was time that they hear about it.
Yeah.
And I did a little research on them, and I went to England, by the way. I wanted to get inside their office, but I got there and it was closed. Darn it, they must have known I was coming. It was I got a picture of their door with a sign out front and all that. Fabian Socialist Party. Well, all right, the stained glass window, this is important. It had depictions of some of the well-known members of the Fabian Socialist group. And they were all dressed like monks, in this Fabian window. And the centerpiece of this whole stained glass window was the image of the earth sitting on top of a large anvil. And two of the members of the group were standing there with hammers, big sledgehammers in their hands, and they were poised to strike the earth with the hammers.
Okay.
And I thought, what is this all about? And across the bottom was the line from Omar Khayyam. See if I can remember it correctly. It went something like this. Dearest love, if thou and I could conspire to change this sorry scheme of things entire, would we not shatter it to bits and then remold it closer to the heart's desire? And there you have it.
Wow.
Destroy everything that exists so you can, from the ashes, build it your way and nobody can complain because they have nothing to defend. That has been the strategy behind all of these major conspiracies for a long, long time. People say, well, they're making a mistake. That if they do this, it's not going to work. I'm going to send them a letter to explain to them it's not going to work. They know it's not going to work. That's why they're doing it. They want to destroy the system.
Wow.
They want to create a welfare system that is so burdensome that it just collapses of its own weight. They know it won't work, but they want people, all of us, living under the bridges.
Oh, wow.
All of us. That's what they want. And until you get that bigger picture, you're just confused and you're putty in the hands of these people. So anyway, back to the issue of we become a royalty, or that's what Americans seem to want, because they're cheering this on. Every time the man in the white horse, regardless of which side he's on, I mean, Biden was doing the same thing, wasn't he? I mean, was there much difference except those are the good guys, or who are the good guys and who are the bad guys? Choose your side, you're going to lose no matter what.
Wow.
And that's the game that's being played.
You know, as you were talking, I'm reminded of the billionaires that have pretty much almost like a piranha class wrap themselves around the Trump administration. And I was thinking about, you know, every president since William McKinley has been pretty much chosen by the business class. You had Rockefeller, J.P. Morgan, and Carnegie, arch enemies, conspire. They didn't care whether they had a Republican or a Democrat. No. And they went for Ohio's McKinley because he was more, you know, attuned
malleable
to their business, you know, shenanigans and how they could run the country. And it seems like every president since then has been, if they weren't chosen by the business class, the big oligarchs, the creatures from Jekyll Isle, then they would surround him. And my own opinion, and I'd like to hear what you have to say about this, is that Trump did come in as a disruptor and as an outsider. But this particular election, to me, went too easy. And then we saw at the inauguration, all the little people that helped get him elected, they weren't there in the front row. You had Jeff Bezos of the Washington Post, who was completely anti-Trump to the point of neurosis, and Amazon. You had Mark Zuckerberg, who censored all, you know, the right-wing people. You had Sundar, how do you say his name? Pichai, the CEO of Google there. And those were the guys that were right there at the inauguration. Now you have, and I don't want to throw in another, you know, great big topic at you, David Sachs, who is very much pushing for a switch to the digital currency and Bitcoin, and the Trump administration jumping on, being pushed into the train of the Bitcoin. It looks like the Trump family wants to buy a portion of Binance, which is a Bitcoin clearinghouse. I wonder if you're seeing the same things. What I'm seeing is that it's not necessarily the administration or even Trump himself, but now he has surrounded himself or has been surrounded by Peter Thiel. And when you have, like you said, a great concentration of power, wealth and power, these guys are not out for the little guy. They're out for themselves.
Absolutely. Well, congratulations on your seeing that, because most people didn't notice that.
Good job.
They didn't, mainly because they're not alert to it.
Yeah.
They think that what they see is what they get. You know, they don't realize that there are levels and covers and deceptions going on. First of all, I think we have to be clear that candidates for presidency are selected by the ruling class. They're selected. They don't even get to be a candidate unless they've been carefully interviewed, quizzed, challenged, and so forth. Now here I go. I hesitate to talk too much about Trump because I like what Trump is doing, as you said before.
We do too. I say 100%. Yeah,
and I like I like what he says, but I look deeper than that.
Yeah.
And I remember back in the first presidency, back before that, when Trump was announcing his candidacy, and everybody thought, Donald Trump, president? Come on. No, that's never going to work. And all of a sudden, he just kept getting press coverage, and first thing you know, they see him a lot. Oh, well, he's a real candidate. I saw an article. It was not on the front page of the newspaper. It was way in the back. A small article about Mr. Trump spending the day in New York City with Kissinger in Kissinger's penthouse, or whatever it says had there, a very plush place. And I thought, what on earth is Donald Trump doing spending a day with Kissinger? Now, for your listeners, in case they're not sure who Kissinger was, he was David Rockefeller's right-hand man. He was his bag man. Kissinger was the Secretary of State for Republicans and Democrats. He was always the one that spoke for Rockefeller. If Rockefeller wanted to send a message to Russia or China or someplace or England, Kissinger would go and deliver the message for him. Everybody knew if Kissinger spoke, he was speaking for the Rockefellers. Why is Donald Trump going to spend the day with Henry Kissinger? And then I thought, I remember when Trump came out in the beginning, he was explaining to people why we should vote for him. And he said, well, mainly because I'm a deal maker. I can make deals with anybody. I will make deals. It'll be good for America. I thought, okay, he went to make a deal.
Yeah.
What would you suppose the deal would be? Well, he'd get to be president. Now, what would he have to do in return? Would something be that the Rockefellers wanted very much? Now, you piece together things like that, and then you realize that, I hate to talk about Trump because he's not the problem. He's just an example.
That's good. No, that's good.
What I want to say about Mr. Trump is that he, in my view, is not making any decisions. Decisions are being made for him by the people that guaranteed that he got into office and continue to do so. And now, one more thing, where if you want to lift the lid and look under the hood a little bit and see what is under the hood, I mentioned before that people don't vote for candidates, they vote against candidates. That means they're voting for the lesser of two evils. But they're still getting the evil.
Right.
What if it was planned from the beginning that that's what they were supposed to do? What if that's what they were supposed to do? Can you imagine anything that made Mr. Trump more popular than the opposition that was thrown against him?
Yes, right, exactly. Hillary Clinton and Joe Biden.
Everybody,
and then Kamala,
the whole establishment went out of their way to do outlandishly unfair, ridiculous, absurd, violent, obnoxious things against Trump.
Unheard of.
Now, that is what made Trump popular.
Yeah,
good.
It did. It made us go back. Oh, here now I got to go defend this guy again.
Yeah.
There's another stupid case in New York. I got to defend this. Here we go. There you go.
So once you begin to think strategically like that, remember our enemy does think that way. Our enemy is very strategic. They have more strategists doing the if this then that plans than they have at the Pentagon.
Wow.
I mean, they knew decades ago that as their plan progressed toward this world government of totalitarianism, they knew that there would be a tremendous pushback and a popular movement against them. So if you were sitting on their board of directors, would you say, gee, I wonder how that's going to turn out? Or would you say, it's going to happen. Why don't we provide the leadership for our own opposition?
Yeah.
And do a good job of it, by the way.
Sure.
Make it look good. It's a real battle. That way, we couldn't possibly lose. We'll take some blows. We'll give the people the illusion of a conflict, because they got to have that. If they think it's all over, what's the point? Let them feel that they're winning or they're losing. Now they're winning again and winning. You know,
Right.
like my grandmother watching professional wrestling years ago. She said, "Look out behind you."
I love that your grandma watched professional wrestling. That's got to be one of the greatest nuggets we're taking from the whole show. I'm retitling everything. It's just going to be G. Edward Griffin's grandma watched professional wrestling. They'll come
And
for
it's
that.
it's just like watching political parties today.
It is.
The same thing. Look out behind you. Lord, that's terrible. Oh, I hate the guy with the swastika tattooed on his arm. See, I want the guy with the American flag over his shoulder.
Yeah.
Choose up sides. Okay. The worse your opponent gets, the stronger people have an affinity to the other guy.
Can I throw out my
Need I say more? So what are we looking at possibly? Now Trump is in office, and we're beginning to see what I have been afraid of is the pushback. Now there's going to be violence. That's going to increase, and there's going to be anarchy, and there'll be the public cry, we need martial law to put down these bad people.
Right.
And it'll be Mr. Trump who will call it.
Wow.
And that'll destroy all opposition to it because he's our man. That's what I think the strategy might be. And it's got nothing to do with Trump. If it weren't Trump, it would be somebody else.
That's good.
I have a theory that goes along with that, and this is conspiracy theory hour. I think we're in the vein of the JFK, in honor of the JFK files being released. My theory is that in 2016, Hillary Clinton was supposed to win, and she was promised to win. This is my theory. You can weigh in on it. And so they saw Donald Trump as the easiest guy to pick off. I felt like a Ted Cruz or a Rand Paul or even a Ben Carson would put up a really great fight. We as conservative Christians, we were adamantly anti-Trump. And they saw him as, I mean, at the time, Christians were very much against Trump because of his morals and stances. And they were very, very conflicted. It's even pro-life people on voting for him. And I felt like, all of his softball interviews were designed, with Mika and MSNBC were designed to promote this guy. I believe that it shocked their system, and they spent 4 years, shutting him down. And then my theory is they knew he was going to run again. And so they're like, okay, this time we are going to make him our candidate. And now we see him being surrounded by the multi-billionaires class, and now he's buddy with Elon Musk
because Trump loves to be loved. If he has one weakness, it's that he loves when people who previously hated him
especially
come back.
Those who he has let, and this is I think one of his biggest downfalls is that he's not loyal to where. If you've been with him and supporting him for 8 years or however long, that's fine and good. But if you hated him
and then you
turn, that almost makes you somebody greater. Like he'll bring in the Jeff Bezos and the Mark Zuckerbergs and the these other people. So that's my theory. I don't know what you think about that.
I wouldn't challenge it. It's as good as mine, I'm sure. No, I'm just I'm a little more skeptical because I've been around this track a couple of times.
You have.
I'm so offended by how many times I've been betrayed.
No,
I get it. I get it.
Yeah, and then I finally realized that's the name of the game. That is what politics is all about.
Yeah,
and so I don't know. What more can I say, except that I know that when Biden got in, nobody questions it was a stolen election.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Not even the Democrats really
Right.
challenged it. Everybody acknowledged it, and yet there were no court cases. Nobody was tried. Nobody's brought to justice. Nobody went to jail. Not even a serious investigation. So why was that? Why was that? It gets suspicious now. Why would that be? There could have been, but no. And not only that, that means that the mechanism that stole the election is still in place.
That's
Yes.
exactly right.
Not only that, but more so, strengthened. And yet here comes an election and there was no sign of it.
No, this is an eerie thing. Honestly, it felt like a cakewalk. We woke up, it felt way too easy, and that
It was.
set up my spidey senses. And ever since, I was like, that's why I've been looking at these billionaires around him, and then to the cryptocurrency and the digital, and Trump coming out with meme coins. And that's to your field of monetary soundness. I think that there is some monetary switch. Do you think that Trump is here to usher in, and we've been talking about this on our show, a monetary reset?
Well, if my theory is correct, that Trump is not making the decisions, then there will be no monetary reset for the good.
Right. Exactly.
right,
That's what
right.
we're talking about. We mean
No,
it.
I mean,
did
like,
they, the powers that be.
They want the collective, because I know that's where you're at.
Let me insert this because this just hit me with clarity. Okay, so when we talk about monetary reset, we know what we want with a monetary reset.
Back to gold and silver,
But
found money.
this paper dollar has literally no value anymore. I mean, they have bled it dry. The turnip cannot give any more juice. It's done, and so. They can't go back to sound money.
Not with everything
like what we would want,
printed.
because if you go back to sound money, then you can't keep perpetuating their system. So I feel like just like locusts that go in and they take and they eat everything, and then they find their next target. Where's our next food? How are we going to get our next source? So I look at modern monetary theory and the digital currency age as their next field to then continue and
Locust,
perpetuate the system. So the question that Leah is asking is, do you think that Trump was brought in to bring them their digital
and to get MAGA
buffet?
on board, basically?
Right.
Well, again, this is all theory, and I don't know how to, assuming I'm right. Well, okay, that's the big assumption right there. But
I'm going to assume you're right.
If I am right, then I think we would have to assume that Trump is not making the decisions. He's doing pretty much what's been scripted for him to do. And that seems to be justified because sometimes he vacillates. He moves back and forth on the same issue.
That's good.
Like
That's
a ping
true.
pong ball.
Yeah.
And but anyway, somebody else is making the decision. So those would be the people we're really worried about.
Sure.
Because Trump would be gone in a couple of years. But those people, they have a hereditary thing going on. And they're going to be around, and what they plan to do is create a system where they will be around forever, and it'll be impossible to remove them. That's what it's all about. So the monetary reset that we're talking about would have to favor their goals.
Right.
And the one thing that they have been moving toward and talking about, wanting so badly for decades, is a cashless society.
Exactly.
By cashless, I mean it's not just not having dollar bills, but it means not having coins or dollar bills or anything, how can you live under a system without anything unless you call it crypto?
Right.
Yeah.
Well, crypto is nothing. It's just a ledger. And it's assuming that everybody are good people and they're going to honor the ledger, But you have nothing in your hand, nothing in your mattress,
Right.
nothing in a coffee can, certainly nothing in a bank account. Or if you have something in an account, it is programmable, as they call it, which means they can throw a switch and unprogram it. It's gone. You don't have to pay your taxes anymore because they just take it.
Yeah.
Right.
It's their money, and they'll let you use it as long as you're a good girl and I'm a good boy. And then
Right.
they'll let us use their money. But if we start questioning what they're doing, they program it out of our possession, and we literally have to depend on the charity of other people
Sure.
to survive. And we can't even go sit on the sidewalk with a tin cup because there's nothing to put into the tin cup.
Wow. We can't even pick up a dime on the, like,
No.
walking down the street.
Right. No, there's nothing. It's just vapor. It's on a ledger. Well, it sounds good as long as everything is working and we trust everybody and everybody's honky-dory. But when it's not honky-dory and things, things are bad, this is not a good situation. That's the system they're working toward.
Right.
Now, they're saying, we're not going to have central bank digital currencies. Okay, we'll call it something else.
Sure, right. We caught on to them.
We'll call it something else. It'll just be the same thing. That regardless of what they call it, it'll be digital, like a credit card. But a credit card could be converted into dollar bills or gold or something.
Sure.
But none of that'll be, that's not what they're talking about. They're talking about purely digital with nothing physical ever
Yeah.
any place behind it, except the power of the state,
Yeah.
That's it. That's the goal. So that's the kind of a system they're working toward. And I don't care what they call it, it's going to be programmable currency if we allow that to happen.
Yeah.
And that last sentence is that's the crux of it. So I don't want people that are watching to start going down, be black pilled, like just depression of this is what they want to do and they always get what they want. Because what is amazing about our nation is that it was founded by people that came together and decided this is the way that we want to live. This is the way that we feel God would have us live. We still have that power. We still have the Constitution. We still have the Declaration of Independence. They cannot take those things away, even as much as they try. And so the reason why we do these types of programs, the reason why we consistently ask Mr. Griffin to come on our show is to remind the American people that we really do have the power. And when we speak out, and one thing that Trump does do is he does listen, I feel, better than others, maybe not 100%, but he does listen.
If enough people make enough noise.
If enough people make enough noise, what I want to get across, at least for today's show, is that we have to make a stand and be loud enough to say, no, we don't want this. This is not the direction that we want to go. We want to make sure that we have something tangible in our hands that we can touch. And so I want to encourage our listeners in that realm to don't be quiet. Don't sit on your hands. Don't just go along to get along. But in addition to that, let's just say worst case scenario, this just hit me. I've never actually followed it down the path of this far because it's too depressing to do. But let's say they achieve that. And you just mentioned there's nobody sitting on the side of the road with a tin can asking for money because there's no money to give. If the cashless society were to be actually materialized, the hope that we do have in coming back from that is I think that most people would get upset. Like, I can't keep doing this digital thing anymore. Then we can go back to what my mom was talking about earlier. We still have gold and silver. And we could even, you see this in Venezuela. They've started mining for gold themselves and they've started making their own transactions with that as money. What is your thought on that kind of worst case scenario and us rising from the ashes and using what we call as God's money to get ourselves out of that?
Well, I think it's the only hope we have, because how else? I can't imagine it happening any other way.
Wow.
It's not going to happen with the benevolence of the ruling elite. They're not going to say, oh, yeah, okay, you win, we'll do it. No, they're going to fight to our death. I mean, if they have to kill us all, they wouldn't hesitate to do that.
Right.
They've got control now, and they're not going to likely give it up. So, yeah, education is the first step, getting enough people to realize what the heck really is going on, to get their heads cleared out of all this garbage that's thrown in the way to confuse them. We're being given a choice. Which side do you want to be on, you Republican or Democrat? Wait, that's not the option. It's got nothing to do with politics. It's got, what are your principles? So forget the good guy, bad guy thing, Forget left versus right. Forget communism versus socialism versus fascism, all these words. What are the principles involved here? No, okay, that's the next step. Then you've got to come to power. Okay, well, if you've got enough people, you can win elections, even in spite of election fraud and all that. But that's a long process.
It is.
And we've got to reestablish control over the power centers of society, like our governments and our media and our school system, little things like that. It's going to be a long process. And I hate to say that because I know when I was young, I keep coming back to that. I can barely remember it myself, but I remember talking to the old fogies. They all were so slow and laid back, and they said, "Relax, Ed. You know, we're not going to win this, and by the next election." And I remember thinking about it. Well, I am. You know, we got to get on with this thing. You people can slow down if you wish, but I'm in a hurry. Well, now here I am. I'm thinking, oh, this is going to be a long process because it took 100 years to get to dismantle our republic. That didn't happen overnight. It happened in little crumbles and nibbles and bites. And it's going to take a little while to rebuild it. And there's probably going to be some very unpleasant events happening in the meantime. But it can happen. I mean, our nation was formed in a violent war. Mm-hmm. Maybe we're going to have to reform it. Maybe not in a war, but violence is going to happen because they will unleash it on us, so that we will call for martial law. Think about that.
I see that. And my prediction, and nobody is proclaiming to have, some sort of crystal ball. But I think that just watching history, and you've been around to experience a lot of that, it seems like a monetary reset would be almost like a war. I mean, if you had, like in 2008, it should have crashed and all of the pensions funds should have gone to kaput. And then what would have happened if the government didn't bail out the banks and the automotive companies? And what we're looking at behind the scenes in the financial system, I mean, home prices are just gargantuan. I don't even know how to explain home prices right now. Every house in the neighborhood across from me is going for $100,000 more than it was 5 years ago. My property taxes are very painful right now. It's evil because it's just like I live in a regular suburban neighborhood. This house was built in 1948. The houses across the street were built in the 80s. Why are they going for $350, $375? That's insane. I don't live in that kind of place. I'm suburbs of Cincinnati. It was not, the best, this is not San Diego. So it's unsustainable. The prices, the inflation, people are living off of, I was talking to our gold and silver people, talking to some ITM trading people. Lots of people are selling their gold because they're liquidating because they don't have any money markets left. They've gone through. So I feel like we're putting on a happy face, but a lot of people are in a lot of pain right now, and nobody's saying or doing anything about it. But you did hear a little bit from Trump, who said we're gonna try to fix this shit, but it will be painful, and that's something I've never heard him say.
Well, it's true. I mean, talk is cheap. We're going to fix it. That's the part I'm focused on. How? I don't think Mr. Trump's handlers are going to allow him to do anything that's going to fix it in our sense, because they're on the other side.
That's right.
He's working for the man. And let's face it, that's it. Now, I know that makes me very popular.
Yeah, this is going to go viral.
That makes me very popular. I'll probably lose half my friends, but let me just say, I hope I'm wrong.
Yeah.
But I got it. You asked me at the beginning, what's my opinion? Well, sometimes I wish I didn't have opinions because then I wouldn't have to explain them. But what I've been is about as honest as I can be with you. And it seems to me that this is, if I were on the other side, and I've studied these guys carefully, I've studied their works, their books, their strategies, and it's amazingly how frank they are about it at times. I think I can think like they do. And if I think like they do, I say, I get it. I know what they're doing. They're deceiving us, and they want us to have tin leaders. I mean, paper leaders that look good, but I mean, everything that can be done with some of these actions that are being done today can be undone just as quickly as they were done.
Sure.
Nothing is permanent like that. So, but if it causes the American people to say, aha, at last we've won, and then go back to watching Dancing with the Stars, and not doing anything about it or trying to, establish more influence in the power centers of society and the governments that schools and so forth, well, then it just continues to roll.
Sure.
They're in no big hurry. Well, they are in a hurry, but I mean, I think they probably are going to think they're going to wrap this thing up by 2000. Put a number on it. I know that if it's 2060, it's already happened. I'm going to guess.
Wow.
You are, and I hope you don't mind us telling your age, but you're 93. I believe that you have reached the point in your life where you don't need to keep friends. You need to just be honest.
Oh, that's good.
Well, the truth is, I've always been there, but I didn't know it.
That's really powerful.
In this circuit that we are in, right? It's very much there's a script and you're supposed to follow it, right? Doge is awesome. Elon Musk is our savior. Everything's going great. Like that's the script. But if we see the guy behind the curtain, and that's not what's really happening, and we don't tell people what are our principles, what are our ethics.
I know. That's it exactly. It's hard to live with that reality. But I see you just crossed the line, so you're stuck with it.
That's hilarious. Okay,
but here's the thing. I think that what you said was really, really, really pertinent. I believe that the office of the president is controlled.
Yes.
And I think that that's something that we can tell to our ardent Trump supporters and cheerleaders is that I think that they are conspiracy theorists to the core who understand that the mechanisms that have been in place for over 100 years to control the system, I don't think any of those have been taken out yet.
Well, they've been anesthetized. Let's put it that way.
That's good.
And unless they're defended, I mean, they don't defend themselves. All those principles need people like us to stand up and stick our jaws out and say, "Yeah, here we are. You got to get past us if you want those principles. We got to stand in the way, put ourselves physically right in the way."
Oh wow!
And that's going to be where we see where the men and the boys separate.
I'm proud of you. Like seriously, to come on and to tell us what's happening and to be, to tell us about. And maybe you want to. You've got. Did you turn it into a book? Your book on the collectivism, or is it still in like a paper printout form?
Oh well, thank you for reminding me of that. Yeah, I'm supposed to promote that every place I go, and I keep forgetting. I'm pulling it out right now if I can find it. It's around here someplace. Well,
Take your time.
All right, I don't. It's out here someplace. I'll just have to tell you about it and how to get it.
We'll put it up as a.
Oh,
Yeah,
thank you.
I'll add it in on the timestamp.
This is recorded, so we're good.
Sure. If you just go online and type in chasm, CHASM .realityzone, one word, .com. So that's chasm.realityzone.com. And that'll bring you to the page where this booklet is. And there's a picture of it, if you could put it up, if you possible. Got it? Okay. And it's free. It's everything I have written so far on this issue of collectivism versus individualism, which, by the way, I consider to be the issue of our day, the most central issue of our day. If people understand that relatively simple concept, that this is not a war between the left and the right, or communism versus capitalism, or socialism, or fascism, or Nazism, or New Dealism, or any of this stuff, or even Americanism, whatever that means to people. It's a conflict between individualism and collectivism. And it's time that we rediscover what those words mean, because they are at the heart of our Constitution, although they were never mentioned by those names. Those were the principles. And if we're going to solve this problem, it's not going to be done without understanding those principles. The most important thing to start with is to understand collectivism versus individualism. So it's a free booklet, and what I did with it is, because I've been working on my next book for quite a while, and I decided not to wait till that book is finished. I reached in and took everything out of the manuscript that had to do with collectivism and individualism and put it all together into about 50 pages.
Oh, wow.
And that's the book. And it's free, and I hope you enjoy it and make copies and send them around to your friends. because that's where we start. That's where the journey begins.
Yeah, and then what you were saying, maybe explain to people, and I know you've been doing this a lot lately too. What is it? What do you mean by collectivism? It seems like to me, it's the bad guys. They all have they have a vision, and they work together against the individual. It's the corporations, it's the banks, it's the politicians. Is that kind of a correct definition?
Well, it had nothing to do with the guys, the bad guys or the good guys. Actually, a lot of collectivists are good people because they believe in collectivism, the slogan.
It's a philosophy, basically.
The philosophy. It's for it. And I made a list of, I think there were 7 different features that distinguish collectivism from individualism, and that's what you'll find in the booklet. But the most fundamental of them all, to give you an idea of what this is all about, is collectivists believe that the group is more important than the individual, and that the individual must be sacrificed if necessary for the greater good of the greater number.
Right, okay.
And collectivists believe just the opposite, that the individual has no value except to the extent that it serves the welfare of the group. Or the state. That always winds up being the group gets retranslated as the state, or sometimes religion. But anyway, whatever group it is, the group of the day, you say that the individual has to be sacrificed, and if individual has goals and objectives and desires that are contrary to what we decide is the best interest of the group, then the individual has to be sacrificed if necessary. That's the underlying philosophy. And then there are other things too, like, all right, here's a very good one that people should think a lot about. Where does the state get its power legitimately? Now, most people would say that it gets it from the people with the consent of the governed.
Right.
But not collectivists, no.
Okay.
Because if you believe that the state gets its power from the governed, then the state can only do those things that the governed can do without the state. See? If you don't have it, you can't give it. So the question then is, well, what do we have the power to use force against our fellow human beings, even to kill them if necessary? Because that's the essence of government. It's legalized force. Well, okay, what do I have the right, most people would say I have the right to kill somebody for? Pretty narrow band of things.
Yeah.
For my self-defense, I can defend my life.
Yeah.
Or my liberty. Somebody's trying to enslave me. There's some people that might say you're not entitled to kill even under those conditions, but most people would say no. They're trying to take my life or my liberty. I'm going to fight to the death to preserve that. So if that's all that we're allowed to use force for legitimately, those are the only powers that we can delegate to the state. And if the state really gets its powers from us only, that's all it can do, is to defend our lives and our liberty, period. Big periods. Blocks. That's it. Stop.
Exclamation point.
It's not to educate us. It's not to provide health care. It's not to provide, food, shelter, clothing, education, straighten our minds, what we pay our employees, what we eat. None of that.
Right.
I can't force my neighbor to close his shop on Sunday.
Right.
And beat him up if he doesn't.
Right.
But how did I give that to the Congress to do that?
Wow.
Yeah.
I didn't have that power. So that gives you an idea. These are the kinds of concepts. If people start thinking about principles rather than good guys versus bad guys, we have a chance. But as long as it's the good versus bad, it's our interpretation of what is good and what is bad, and you're hopelessly in a mire.
That's it's the antithesis. It is a religion. It's an antithesis to Christianity, because in Christianity, you come together and you give as you freely want to, right? you're encouraged to. You are encouraged to give to the poor. You are encouraged to take care of people, because then you are storing up treasures in heaven. You're doing good things. You're doing good works. Where the state came in as a religion and to force charity and to force these quote unquote good works, and then things may go against your conscience. Like, it's against my conscience to pay for these public schools. It's against my conscience to fund abortion clinics. And yet I am forced to do so on force of, you could almost say death, but to take my life, I'm a little bit, right now I'm a little offended at property taxes. It's a personal grievance of mine, because an extra I think it's like $2,500 in the past 10 years that our property taxes have been raised, and it's very painful, and I'm very angry about this. But when I think about where they go to, and I think about if everybody in Ohio or any state were to actually vote on if you collected property taxes or not, I actually think that by Democratic vote, people would vote no. But then again, it is when you hear people argue it online for the public school system or for property taxes, it's a complete collectivist mindset, which is, yeah, but I don't care if an 80-year-old loses their home because of property taxes, because
kids must be educated.
Must be educated.
Yeah. Well, that's the whole issue. Where did any individual, you or me or anybody else, have the right to tell our neighbors what they have to fund in the way of a charitable donation?
That's good. I
can't beat them up if they choose to be charitable for a cause that I don't like. Or I can't even beat them up if they don't want to be charitable at all. If they don't want to donate a dime to anybody of need, I can't go beat them up or shoot them or kill them or imprison them
or go into their house and take
I
stuff.
can't do that. So how can I vote for some congressman or legislator who's going to pass a law to do that?
Yeah.
Where did they get that power, you see? They don't have that power. The state becomes an entity in itself under those conditions, and now the individual is, under the rule of collectivism, valuable only to the extent that they serve the benefit of the collective, and the benefit of the collective is decided by the people who rule the collective. They make the decisions. Not the people getting the benefits, but the ones at the top say, I speak for the people. So it's just a scam. It's a dictatorship is all it is. And they call it democracy. Our founding fathers knew better. They didn't call it, they said a democracy was the worst kind of a government, and that's why they called it a republic.
Yeah. If we can keep it, as the saying goes.
And we didn't keep it. We didn't keep it.
Right. No, that's good. That's good.
This has gone by so fast.
It has.
I've looked at the time and I'm like, oh my
I know, we got to let him go, but I
gosh.
have a couple of things before we let you go. One, I have a very practical question for your mind. And this, I love the philosophical ones because that's my jam. That's my wheelhouse. But from a practical stance, we're looking at all of these governments around the world, and a lot of them are shifting to stockpiling gold. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, let me think of what my thoughts are on that. First of all, I think it's smart. But the real issue is, why are they doing it?
Right.
Why are they so smart now when they weren't smart 20 years ago?
Right.
Or 10 years ago? I think it's because they know that we're going into uncharted territory, and it's not going to be money as we used to know it. The dollar will no longer be the reserve currency of the world, so it won't make any difference of how many dollars you have in your basement or whatever. And so I think they're considering that the only thing they can be historically depended upon is gold.
Yeah.
And so they're trying to prepare for that. I suspect that maybe these people who are making these decisions are on the inside, of course. They have access to information that we don't. I think they might be looking for a time when it'll be legal for banks and financial institutions to exchange gold as a monetary base or an asset, but not for common people.
Oh, wow.
Wow. Okay.
I haven't heard that theory before, but that.
Well,
I have actually.
That's good.
I am making it up. I am making it up because I put my hat on. What would I do if I were working for the other side? That's what I would do.
Yeah.
And it's not hard to do. This is what they will do if they think they can get away with it. And they can get away with almost anything they want to right now.
I think they did that in Zimbabwe, I believe. They tried to go back to a gold standard, and it really was just for the wealthy. It didn't ever trickle down to the regular people.
Right. Yeah, I think that might be something they try to do. So maybe the banks are onto this, and they figured that they will exchange assets on the basis of the gold dollar. I think that's primarily what they're trying to do with Bitcoin now too, and put that into that same category as a reserve that will be in the case of Bitcoin, it'll be technically available to just about anybody with a Bitcoin account, but most people are not going to figure that out. So it'll still be restricted to a very small number of people, and it won't interfere. The number of little people like us that might have a half of a Bitcoin or something, or a third of a tenth of a Bitcoin, it's not going to interfere with their plans very much. You know?
Okay.
And since they can do anything, they can say, well, now we have AI and these supercomputers, we can crack the codes. We know who you are, even though technically you're supposed to be secure from that. That's no longer true anymore with these supercomputers.
Right.
They'll track every transaction, every commercial transaction, every piece of data as to where you were at 3:30 in the morning at such and such a time, and that's when a transaction came in at the liquor store or something. And they put it all together. Oh, that was you, and they now know who you are, even though they had to do it by deduction.
Right.
So,
Well, Canada froze crypto wallets. We didn't think that was possible.
well, it's all possible. It's digital.
Yeah.
Everything is possible. It's digital.
That's why we encourage people, we have a small homestead. We raise, like I told you, we raise pigs and chickens, and we have a large garden. I encourage people to get as self-sufficient as you possibly can, as undependent on the system as you possibly can, because it's much more difficult for them to turn off, your garden or something like that than it is your wallet. And I say the same thing for even gold and silver, and having these kinds of tangible. We have to get back to a society of tangibility, of things where we're communicating with people, face to face, or even through letters. And we have to start having real things in our lives. Read a real book. Get The Creature from Jekyll Island in paperback and hold it in your hands and read it. And that's, I think, one of the ways that we can take back our nation. So, Mr. Griffin, before you go, I want to do two things. Can you tell people about the Red Pill University, please, real quick?
Well, the Red Pill University and Red Pill Expo are very important programs that I have instituted. And I don't want to take too much time, but they're both an outgrowth of another organization I created back in 2002 called Freedom Force International. Now, Freedom Force International is kind of a think tank where we really spend our time delving deeply into the issues similar to what we've been discussing today, trying to figure out what's going on and figure out what to do about it. But it's relegated to a relatively small number of people, like you girls and myself and a couple of our friends. We spend our lives on this thing. The average person out there has got to make a living, they got a family to raise and so forth. And it's just, they're on our side, they understand, they want to know more, but they don't have the time to devote their lives to it. And we need them, because we can't do it with our small numbers, and that's where we come up with this thing called Project Outreach, where we reach out to that second group of people, and a larger group of people that we need to mobilize and make physical changes in our political and educational system. So that's where we created Red Pill University and Red Pill Expo. Now, by the very nature of the name, it is based after a meme for a sci-fi movie. It's pop psychology, right? Pop entertainment and so forth. But the message is very clear and very pure. It's a valid message that we're living in a world of illusion, and we got to take this red pill so that we can clear out the illusions and see the world the way it really is. So in that sense, it's a very good allegory. So we are playing it to the hilt. And so we've got the Red Pill University, which is an online event. I urge people to go there and see all the good stuff we have. It's all free. And that's redpilluniversity.org. And then for that 2 times a year, we have public events where we load the stage with 18 to 20 powerful speakers who tell their own stories of the red pills that they have taken in their careers, their professions, or their personal lives. And it's really mind-bending. And those are called Red Pill Expos. And our next one is scheduled for July 12 and 13 in Tulsa, Oklahoma. So if you want to know about that one, go on the internet and tune in redpillexpo.org. redpillexpo.org.
First Red Pill Expo ever in 2017 in Bozeman, Montana.
That's
it.
it. Yes.
Awesome.
It was wonderful. And actually, I was looking it up before you even mentioned it, and I saw that it's in Tulsa. That's very interesting. Leah's alma mater is in Tulsa, Oklahoma.
we lived there for 5
We
years.
lived there for 5 years. So I was looking at the dates, and I was like, are we even available? So far, it looks like we are. So maybe we'll head back out to Tulsa, Oklahoma. We went to the first
good.
Reawaken America tour there back in 2021. So it's been quite a few years since we've been there. So I don't know. Maybe the Resistance Chicks will make a stop there at the Red Pill Expo.
Well, you better do that, gals. You bring your recorders with you and your microphones, and you'll be able to lock down some good speakers and a lot of attendees and get interviews with them. And then you'll have material to feed your program all year long after that.
Amen. Amen. If the date stays open, we will definitely try to make it out there. So before we leave, Mr. Griffin, can I pray a blessing over you?
Can you do what?
Can I pray a blessing over you?
Oh, I would be honored if you would. Yes.
Okay. Dear Heavenly Father, we thank you so much for Mr. Griffin, who has been a treasure and a gem to hundreds of thousands of people, probably millions over the years. I thank you for the truth that he's been telling. I thank you that you have kept him in excellent health and that he still looks like he's 65 years old and kicking it, better than most people out there that are half of his age. So I thank you that you're going to continue that health in him. I pray that you bless his wife, that you bless his family and his children, and you bless these expos and you bless all of the works that he puts his hands to, that you bless this new book. I thank you for the chasm and this idea of collectivism coming to the surface so that we can see what it is and we can identify it instead of being lulled into a false sense of security. And so I just thank you for everything that he has given to us. And I just pray that he feels the love of so many people and the thankfulness, just having him on a program like this makes people feel like there is hope in this world. And so I just pray that everything that he's poured out will come back to him tenfold. And I just thank you for the awesomeness of the privilege of being able to have him on our program. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Amen.
Thank you. Thank you.
You know, the last time we had you on, your wife came in, and you guys have been married for how many years?
71 now.
And I think, was it you or she said, I think it'll last?
One of you did say that. It was
I
epic.
think it'll last.
That's her famous line. But I keep saying, I'm not so sure. It might be doomed.
You're terrible. Well, everybody go and follow Mr. Griffin. I get his need to know emails all of the time. It makes my day to go through them and all the hard work that he puts into that. So I'll have all the links available on resistancechicks.com for how you can follow Mr. Griffin. Get in touch. Red Pill Expo, Red Pill University, and the chasm and all of those things. So Mr. Griffin, thank you for coming back on our show and gracing us with your presence. It's been a blast.
Thank you for inviting me. It's a pleasure. You charge my batteries. So anytime you want to do this, just let me know.
Awesome.
I will. All right, you guys, remember, it's not just a conspiracy theory if it's actually the truth. We'll see you next time right here from resistancechicks.com.
Okay, bye-bye.
The long wait is over and it's finally open. The Resistance Chicks General Store. Our mouths were filled with laughter, our tongues with songs of joy. Sisters Leah and Michelle Svensson have been making their own home, health, and personal care products for well over a decade and are now bringing you everything you've been asking for, like the Oil of Joy Original Collection, deodorant for men and women, face and body soap, lavender oatmeal, homestead hands, face and body butter, Oil of Joy, soap products, and much, much more. These products are amazing and so good for your skin. We realize that many of our health issues can be traced back to the harmful chemicals and ingredients in most of the products on the shelves today. But even more than that, we believe that our Creator, God the Father, gave us everything for life and godliness, and He desires for us to work with our hands, to take joy in the gifts He has given us in this earth to enrich our daily lives. To learn more about all of these amazing products, visit shop.resistancechicks.com and place your order today before quantities are sold out. You deserve to treat yourself to the best spa day ever. You deserve the products from the Resistance Chicks Joy Collection, only at the Resistance Chicks General Store. Is any sick among you? Let them pray over him, anointing him with oil in the name of the Lord, and the prayer of faith shall heal the sick.